Continuing from the last episode, she is recognized nationwide as the beautiful goddess every man dreams of marrying. Incredibly, I had the pleasure of spending a night with her after getting drunk. When I woke up, I intended to take responsibility, but to my surprise, she treated me like a gigolo and even left a tip. When I arrived at my new job with the tip in hand, my heart almost stopped because the stunning female CEO sitting in front of me was the same girl in sexy black stockings who had shared that wonderful night with me. Picking up from the last video's content, Emily quickly dismissed this absurd thought. After all, our relationship was just a pretense, and she was a staunch believer in not marrying. After dinner, my mom, Carol, suddenly took out a bracelet and said, "Emily, I really like you. This is a gold bracelet passed down in our family, and I want you to wear it, hoping you'll like it." Emily was touched but instinctively refused, saying, "Auntie, this is too precious. Charlotte and I aren't at the point of marriage yet. This isn't appropriate." Carol pretended to be upset and pouted, saying, "I've already decided. You're going to be my daughter-in-law. Although Charlotte really doesn't deserve you, it's his luck to be dating you." I was initially shocked that my mom had brought out a family heirloom bracelet, but hearing her say, "I don't deserve Emily," made me angry. I thought to myself, is this really my own mother? I'm also considered a very handsome guy. Eventually, Emily couldn't refuse my mom's kindness and temporarily accepted the bracelet. Unexpectedly, my parents then brought out several more gifts, including some paintings they had cherished for years and various gold and jade jewelry, all of which Emily reluctantly accepted. I stood there, dumbfounded, feeling like this was turning into an engagement scene. I tugged at my mom's sleeve, and after we stepped outside, I quickly said, "Mom, you gave Emily the gifts too early. If we break up later, all this money will be lost." Carol instantly became angry, looking around for a broom while saying, "If you dare break up with Emily, I'll break your legs." I hastily begged for mercy, saying, "Mom, don't be angry. I was just joking. As long as you're happy, that's what matters." Carol gave me a kick and said, "That's more like it. Don't let me hear you say such stupid things again." I just slipped Emily an envelope with a savings card in it as a wedding gift. I stood there, stunned, internally screaming, "My gosh, she really is pushing for a marriage. But Emily and I are just pretending." Sure enough, when Carol went back inside, she said, "Emily, you and Charlotte aren't getting any younger. It's time to think about marriage. Tell us which house you like in the city center, and we'll get it ready for you." Meanwhile, I thought, my mom must be crazy. We don't have that kind of money. As Emily's face turned pale, she said, "Auntie, I think marriage is too rushed. I need to think about it." After saying this, she turned her head to look at me, her eyes carrying a hint of pleading. Seeing this, I quickly interjected, "Mom and Dad, don't rush into pushing for marriage like this. It's Emily's first visit to our house. You should give her some time to think." Thankfully, my parents didn't bring up the subject of marriage again. Shortly after, Carol began showing Emily around our house and even arranged a room for her, saying, "Emily, you can stay in Charlotte's room tonight. I've changed the sheets and duvet, and Charlotte will sleep in the guest room." Standing to the side, I felt quite miserable inside, but I dared not show it and maintained a smile throughout. Emily sweetly thanked Carol with a smile. However, at that moment, Emily's phone suddenly rang. She stepped aside to answer the call. After a while, she came back with a somewhat unnatural expression and said, "Auntie, that was my dad on the phone. He says there's an emergency at home and I need to rush back. The driver is already waiting for me outside." Carol, disappointed, said, "Okay, then you can come over another day." After seeing Emily off, Carol and Scott exchanged glances, understanding each other perfectly. Scott said, "Let's go inside. We need to have an important family meeting tonight." I clearly remembered that there had only been 2 family meetings before. One when my aunt went abroad for business and the other when my grandfather passed away 3 years ago. Back in the room, Scott asked, "Son, tell me the truth. How did Emily's family treat you when you visited her home yesterday?" After thinking for a moment, I honestly replied, "Emily's mom and grandma were very pleased with me, especially her grandma who kept urging us to get married. However, Her dad was very cold towards me. Hearing this, Carol and Scott's expressions turned serious. My mom said, "No wonder Emily left in such a hurry after receiving that call. It must have been her dad who called, ordering her to come home, and he even sent a driver to make sure she would." I was deep in thought, originally planning to enjoy some carefree days without being pressured into marriage by pretending to be Emily's boyfriend. With caution, I said, "Mom and Dad, it's true that Emily's dad doesn't think highly of me. Bill, being the chairman of a famous real estate company with a net worth of billions, naturally looks down on a family like ours. I don't want you to suffer because of me, so I've decided to break up with Emily." My decision to break up was met with fury from my parents, culminating in a broken broomstick in my mother's hands. My father reproached me, saying, "You always back down when faced with difficulties. Your mother and I will support you wholeheartedly to marry Emily." Carol also added, "If it's just because of financial issues that Emily's father looks down on us, that's trivial. He's just a small company's chairman. We shouldn't be afraid of him." I was puzzled by my parents' sudden bravado. Meanwhile, at Emily's expansive family estate, Bill was concluding a phone call. "Chairman, I've completed the investigation about Charlotte. His family is quite ordinary, not as influential or wealthy as the general manager described," the caller informed. Bill hung up as Emily, who had just returned home, entered the house and noticed her father on the second floor. Bill waved at her, saying, "Emily, come up," before turning into his study. With heavy steps, Emily ascended the spiral staircase, her mind racing with thoughts of the impending conversation. In the study, she greeted her father. "Dad, I'm back. What did you want to talk about?" Bill replied, "I've had someone investigate your boyfriend. I will not approve of your relationship with him. He's not worthy of you." Emily bowed her head, thinking, "As expected, Dad opposes my relationship with Charlotte. I'll pretend to defy him for now, then adjust my actions accordingly." She responded, "It doesn't matter to me what his background is. We love each other and are comfortable together. That's enough for me." Bill scoffed, "You're naively ridiculous. Don't think I don't know that Charlotte's family is poor and he's after our wealth. It's ludicrous." Sensing her father's displeasure, Emily feigned distress. "Dad, it's been so hard for me to finally find a man I like. If you really want me to break up with Charlotte, you'll have to agree to one condition." Bill straightened up, intrigued. "What condition?" Without hesitation, Emily stated, "You have to promise not to force me to go on arranged dates anymore." Bill stood abruptly, scolding her. "You're a well-known young CEO. How can you still be so emotional? You can't just think about love. You need to consider our entire family. You must choose a suitable boy from a wealthy family soon and aim to get married by the end of the year." Emily was stunned by her father's audacious plans. Since he had such outrageous expectations, Emily felt less constrained about adhering to them, knowing that her mother and grandmother were more considerate of her feelings. Emily defiantly declared, "I disagree. I love Charlotte and I won't marry anyone else." Seeing his daughter determined to defy his arrangements, Bill became infuriated and exclaimed, "Charlotte has completely manipulated you. How could you become so foolish?" Soon, the study was filled with Bill's angry shouts, coughing fits, and the sound of a teacup shattering. Chaos enveloped the entire house. The next morning, I was still lounging in bed when my dad yanked me out of my blankets. He said, "Get up quickly. During breakfast, I need to teach you how to bring up the meeting between both our parents." We had discussed late into the night, and the decision made was to arrange a meeting between our parents this weekend. Initially, it was just to deal with the matchmaking, but now things seemed to be moving in an irreversible direction. After breakfast, as I was about to leave, my mom handed me a gift bag and said, "Son, these 2 bracelets are incredibly valuable. You must give them to Emily in person and have her pass them on to her mother and grandmother." All I could do was respond resignedly, "I know, Mom." Upon arriving at the office, I went straight to the general manager's office and opened the door. Emily was lying on a massage chair. Seeing me, she tiredly asked, "Why are you here?" I nervously replied, "Emily, something big has happened." She stood up, seemingly unconcerned, and asked, "What big thing?" I cleared my throat, eager to explain. After you were picked up by your dad's driver last night, my parents panicked. They even called my aunt abroad in the middle of the night to discuss my marriage. Guess what they're forcing me to do now? Emily, striding over with her long legs, inquired, "What are they forcing you to do? Don't tell me they want our parents to meet." I was stunned and asked, "How did you know?" Emily smiled thoughtfully and said, "It's easy to guess. If they like me, the next step would naturally be to set the marriage date early." I pressed on anxiously, "So what do we do? Your dad will definitely not agree. Should I tell my parents to call it off when I get home today? Even if my parents like you a lot, they can't keep forcing you on me." Emily's smile suddenly tightened as she said, "Charlotte, why didn't you ask what happened to me after I went home last night?" I widened my eyes and asked, "What happened? Your dad didn't scold you for coming home with me, did he?" Emily pouted, looking pitiful, and said, "You guessed right. My dad did scold me. We had a huge fight last night, and I was almost hit." Emily, hearing my apology and suggestion to end our fake relationship, couldn't help but laugh, amused by my earnest and flustered demeanor. She thought to herself, "How can he be so naive to not see that I was just pretending to be upset? Why do I find him oddly adorable all of a sudden?" After a moment, Emily composed herself and said seriously, "Are you sure you want to end it just like that? Charlotte, I got scolded by my dad because I went to your house with you. Are you planning to walk away without any compensation?" Stammering, I replied, "What should I do then? Wouldn't ending this be better for you?" Emily explained, "Although my dad is strongly against me dating you, if we end our partnership, he will immediately arrange for me to go on another arranged date. So, if you really want to help me, don't terminate our partnership." I responded, "But then my parents will continue to push for marriage." Emily thought for a moment, then nonchalantly said, "It's okay. I'll convince my dad to agree to our family's meeting." Shocked, I exclaimed, "Doesn't that mean we might actually end up getting married?" Blushing, Emily said, "If we can pretend to be a couple, we can pretend to be married too. Anyway, I refuse to be a sacrifice for a family alliance." I cautioned her, "Emily, think it through. Even a fake marriage involves legally binding marriage certificates." Her cheeks flushed even more, and turning away, she ordered coolly, "Charlotte, go back to your workstation now." Suppressing a smile, I placed the gift bag on the floor, saying, "This is from my mom. She wanted me to give these bracelets to your mom and grandma. Please pass them on for me." After that, I turned and left the office. Once I was gone, Emily picked up the gift bag from the floor and carefully hung it next to her bag, thinking to herself that even though the gifts from Charlotte's mom might not be valuable, they represented her goodwill. A few minutes later, Emily called Bill. Bill, who had been furious the night before, answered with a particularly cold tone. "What do you want, Emily?" Trying to lighten the mood, Emily said, "Don't be mad, Dad. How can we stay angry with each other for so long?" Bill chuckled, "Get to the point. I'm busy." Emily proceeded, "Dad, I have something important to discuss. Charlotte's parents would like to meet with our family this weekend." After a pause, Bill scoffed, "Emily, are you sure his family wants to meet with us?" Emily replied earnestly, "Charlotte's parents are very pleased with me, and they are eager for us to get engaged. More importantly, I myself am ready to marry Charlotte soon." Bill roared in anger, "They probably can't even afford a bathroom in our house. Yet they dare to suggest meeting us and even fantasize about marrying my daughter. Do you think I'd agree to this?" Emily had anticipated her father's reaction, and once he had vented his anger, she calmly responded, "Dad, I'm not asking for your opinion. I'm informing you. If you choose not to attend, Grandma and Mom will accompany me." Frustrated, Bill slammed his teacup to the ground and said, "You're just trying to provoke me, aren't you? Fine. Since they want a meeting, I'll meet them. I want to see which delusional family raised such a foolishly hopeful son." After hanging up, Bill returned to the tea room where he resumed discussing the matter of family alliances with his friend Peter, whose economic and social status were comparable to his. Peter mentioned, "My son has had feelings for your daughter for some time now." Suddenly, his phone rang. As he saw the caller ID, Peter quickly excused himself and left the room in a fluster. Bill, observing Peter's sudden anxious departure, felt a flicker of suspicion. Outside the tea room, Peter respectfully said into the phone, "I'm honored you called, sir. What can I do for you?" On the other end of the line, Scott, while cooking in his kitchen, instructed, "Peter, I need you to check on someone named Bill." Peter was shocked, unsure why Scott suddenly wanted to investigate Bill. He cautiously replied before committing to anything, "Are you referring to Bill from X Real Estate Group?" "Yes, that's him. I want you to especially check if his background is clean," Scott directed. "Understood, sir. I'll take care of it right away," Peter assured him promptly. When Peter returned to the tea room, Bill welcomed him back with a smile, continuing their conversation and even pushing Emily's resume towards Peter. Peter, puzzled, asked, "Bill, what are you suggesting?" Bill replied cheerily, "Just letting the kids get to know each other a bit." Peter's expression darkened as he responded, "Bill, do you really think the kids can get to know each other through resumes? You're being too hasty. If they naturally come together in the future, I'm all for it." Bill was taken aback by Peter's sudden change in demeanor, wondering if the phone call had something to do with it. At the company, I went out with my boss at noon. After handling some business, we returned to the headquarters. Just as I was about to head for the elevator, I saw a woman dressed elegantly. However, when she turned around, the smile on my face froze instantly. I hurried forward and asked, "What brings you here?" Carol, seeing her son, smiled tenderly and said, "I came to see how you and your daughter-in-law are doing. Have you had lunch yet? I brought you both some food." My mom, usually with a boisterous voice, was uncharacteristically gentle with me today, and what's more terrifying was that she had come to the office. Meanwhile, a group of colleagues around us exclaimed in admiration at Carol. Who would have thought Charlotte's mom would be so young and beautiful? She looks like a wealthy lady from a well-off family. Did you hear that? She didn't just bring food for her son, but for her daughter-in-law too. Listening to everyone's chatter, Carol was delighted, feeling that her act as a gentlewoman was a success. However, my feelings were the complete opposite. "Mom, please don't bring up the daughter-in-law again. We're at the office, and if the colleagues find out that Emily and I are dating, we'll definitely be discovered." Seeing her son so anxious, Carol got angry, but considering she was at my workplace, she restrained herself. Carol said, "Don't worry too much. You and my daughter-in-law are just in a normal relationship. I'll leave after watching you eat." I stood there nervously, thinking, if people find out about my relationship with Emily, I'll be drowned in their gossip tomorrow. Desperately, I grabbed my mom's arm and pleaded, "Mom, you can't meet Emily. You absolutely mustn't reveal my relationship with her." Just then, the elevator doors opened. Carol shrugged off my hand and walked elegantly into the elevator. Helplessly, I shook my head and followed her in. Soon after, my boss and some colleagues from other departments also entered the elevator. My boss took the initiative to greet my mom. Carol, with a full smile, responded, "Hello there, young man. I can tell you're a successful person just by looking at you." My boss smiled and said, "Thank you, Andy. By the way, you mentioned bringing food for your daughter-in-law. Are you talking about Charlotte's girlfriend?" Turning to me, he added, "Charlotte, you and your girlfriend work in the same company and nobody knows?" I could only give a wry smile to my boss, feeling that the inevitable had finally happened. Carol, beaming with a smile, said, "Charlotte is quite shy and embarrassed to talk about his love life. Indeed, my daughter-in-law Emily works here at this company. She is the most beautiful girl in your company." The elevator fell silent in an instant, everyone stunned. There was only one Emily in their company, the CEO, Emily. When the elevator doors opened, amidst everyone's shock, I pulled my mom out of the elevator and into the hallway. Then, with a serious expression, I confessed, "I must be honest with you now. Emily does work here, but her situation is different. She is the CEO of this company." Carol glanced at me nonchalantly and said, "That's a good thing. It means your wife is outstanding. Don't just stand there. Let's go meet Emily. She must be starving." I quickly said, "Emily doesn't know yet. This is big news. I need to tell her first." Carol replied, "No need. I've already spoken to Emily in advance, and she has agreed to me bringing her lunch. Let's go. I can't wait to meet my dear daughter-in-law." When Carol and I reached the general manager's office, Emily immediately came running over and exclaimed, "Auntie, you're here. Wow, you look gorgeous today." Carol looked at Emily with affection and said, "Emily, you look a bit worn out today. Didn't you sleep well last night? Uncle has made some delicious food. Let me serve it to you right now." Soon, the coffee table next to the sofa was filled with various delicious dishes. Emily sniffed exaggeratedly and remarked, "It smells so good. I can tell it's going to be delicious." After eating, Carol looked at Emily lovingly and asked, "Emily, have you discussed meeting our families with your parents?" Emily smiled and replied, "My parents have agreed. Our families will meet this weekend." Carol joyfully said, "That's wonderful, Emily. I'll arrange a restaurant with your uncle then." Hearing that the families were really going to meet, I glanced at Emily nervously, but found her smiling gently, calm and composed, as if arranging a marriage was a naturally agreed-upon outcome of our mutual affection. Carol, satisfied, said, "Then I'll head back now." After Carol and I left, Emily couldn't help but laugh. She realized that continuing to pretend to be in a relationship with me wasn't just to rebel against her father's pressures. She seemed to have grown fond of my family, asked my mom, and I walked out of the elevator. I noticed that the colleagues around us were buzzing with gossip. Charlotte just joined the company and is already with the general manager. He must have something special. I thought to myself that probably the whole group knew by now. As we exited the lobby, Carol calmly said, "Son, you don't need to mind what others think. They are just envious of you." I smiled helplessly and replied, "I know, Mom. You head back now and drive safely." Carol smiled and added, "There's also a small portion of soup here, specially made by your dad." I got so caught up talking to Emily that I forgot to give it to you. After my mom left, I vigorously twisted open the lid of the thermos. A strange, aromatic yet bitter scent instantly hit my nostrils. The contents were dark and murky, and I couldn't make out what ingredients were used. Nevertheless, I drank it all down. Satisfied, I turned back to my office, knowing I'd inevitably face a barrage of questions from my colleagues. Sure enough, as soon as I got back to my desk, my colleagues swarmed around me, saying, "Charlotte, you've really kept us in the dark. Come on, tell us, how did you get to know the general manager? Are you guys getting married soon?" I was momentarily flustered and at a loss for words. Just then, my boss scolded everyone, "It's work time. What are you all doing?" Once the other colleagues dispersed, my boss's expression changed immediately. He came up to me with a grin and said, "Come on, tell me, how did you manage to woo this famously tough woman?" I gave a wry smile and said, "Bro, don't tease me. Emily and I have just made our relationship official." My boss chuckled mischievously. "No need to explain. I get it. Just make sure to put in a good word for me in the future." A few hours later, I stood up intending to deliver the completed report to my boss's office. Suddenly, my legs went weak and I collapsed back into my chair. The next second, my body began to heat up and my muscles turned stiff and burning hot. This feeling was eerily familiar. Could it be something wrong with the soup my mom gave me? With this thought, I grabbed my phone to confront my mom. Just then, a message from my mom popped up. "Son, you must have finished the ultimate invincible tonic soup by now. It's a secret formula your dad came up with. After drinking it, Emily will surely be even more pleased with you." I was dumbfounded. Could this be like the soup Emily's grandmother made me drink that night? I exited the chat with my mom and noticed dozens of group messages. I clicked through them, finding all sorts of gossip news about my relationship with Emily. Some even made the trending lists. The news ranged from claims that I was being kept by Emily to rumors that my mom was a wealthy lady. The most outrageous claim was that Emily was pregnant before marriage, and with triplets. No less at that moment, Emily's call came in. I looked around and then lowered my head, carefully answering the phone. "Emily, those news?" Emily cut me off, saying briskly, "Charlotte, come upstairs." Then she hung up that I quickly drank a few glasses of cold water to calm myself down, then headed towards Emily's office. When I opened the door, a familiar scent greeted me. I looked up and saw Emily lounging lazily on her desk, her long legs casually crossed, looking incredibly charming and alluring. This sight made my mouth dry, and I felt a spark ignite inside me. Emily raised her hand and pointed to the sofa, saying, "Come, sit." I took a few steps closer and anxiously said, "Emily, do you know? The internet is flooded with gossip about us, and it's even trending." But instead of looking worried, Emily couldn't help but laugh. "So what?" she continued. "I got scolded by my dad and forced into a business marriage because I took you home to meet my parents. Didn't you agree to keep pretending to be my partner as compensation?" I turned my face away, not daring to look at her stunning face for fear of losing control. After a moment, I said seriously, "Yes, but I feel really uncomfortable." Emily stood up, hooked her arm through mine, and said softly, "You'll get used to it. Don't worry about what others think." As it was time to leave work, she added, "We'll go out together. There will probably be paparazzi at the company entrance. Be prepared." Sure enough, as soon as we stepped out of the company, hundreds of reporters swarmed us, and the security guards couldn't do anything. Flashlights flickered, and camera shutters clicked nonstop. Suddenly, someone bumped hard into Emily's shoulder, and she cried out. This made me furious. I pointed at the reporters and shouted, "Take all the pictures you want, but don't hurt her. If anyone touches her again, I won't let it go." Then I naturally took Emily's hand and quickly walked towards the parking lot. 10 minutes later, sitting in the back seat of the car, we looked at each other and smiled. Emily tilted her head and teased, "How did it feel? Did you enjoy the celebrity experience?" I shrugged and smiled. "It was kind of fun." With a serious expression, Emily said, "But you looked really scary when you yelled at those reporters. I've never seen you so angry." I turned away, a bit embarrassed, and said softly, "I just can't stand seeing people hurt you. I don't know why I got so mad. I just didn't want you to be wronged." Emily laughed. "Are you falling for me? Just one night together, and you're so protective. You're too much." I said, "Don't tease me, or I might do something reckless." Hearing this, Emily stuck out her cute little tongue and pouted, not saying anything more. A few minutes later, Emily checked the time on her phone and said, "Let's wait a bit longer until the reporters leave. This is my private garage. It's pretty quiet." The car fell silent again, and the atmosphere grew increasingly tense. I felt the effect of the soup getting stronger, and Emily's faint scent was driving me crazy. Noticing my discomfort, Emily asked with concern, "What's wrong? Is it too stuffy in here?" I licked my dry lips, then loosened my tie and unbuttoned my shirt collar, saying, "I'm fine, just a bit hot." Emily looked at me and couldn't help but admit that I looked quite handsome and charming in just a white shirt with a loose tie. No wonder she couldn't resist following me that night at the bar after a few drinks. I turned to meet Emily's gaze and asked, "What's wrong? Why are you staring at me?" At that moment, Emily's expression was lazy, and her eyes were dreamy. After a few seconds, she softly said, "Because you're good-looking. Isn't that what handsome guys are for?" I quickly looked away, unable to keep staring into Emily's eyes, as they were too enchanting and seductive. Seeing me speechless, Emily burst into laughter. "I'm just kidding. I was staring at you because I noticed you seem to get hot easily. Look at all that sweat on your forehead," she said. Handing me a tissue, I grabbed the tissue and awkwardly wiped my forehead. Emily watched my clumsy and adorable actions, laughing so hard her chest heaved with each chuckle. I felt a bit dizzy and said, "Stop laughing." At that moment, I felt like my insides were on fire, every cell in my body desperately seeking an outlet. After a while, Emily stopped laughing and handed me a bottle of water, saying, "You're so hot. Drink some water to cool down." I took the water and twisted off the cap, only to be hit by a sweet and alluring scent. I noticed a faint lipstick mark on the side of the bottle's mouth. I stared at it for a moment, then looked up at Emily's red lips. Seeing me holding the water without drinking, Emily curiously leaned closer. Her cheeks flushed as she said, "Sorry, I grabbed the wrong bottle. I drank from that one earlier. Let me get you a new one." She turned to get another bottle, but just then, I unexpectedly placed my large hand on the back of her head, and she stared at me wide-eyed in shock. The next second, I leaned in close to her. Nervous and flustered, Emily said, "Charlotte, what are you doing?" I gazed intensely at Emily, and my presence engulfed her completely. Welcome to subscribe to Sunshine Talk Anime, bringing you more exciting novel anime.